Hello and welcome to the State of Waste for the January 30th, 2022 update. Not a real busy week in the House or really the Senate for education stuff being passed out of committee, but there are a couple things that have been happening. House Bill 1601 homelessness pilot is still just waiting in appropriations. And as we near the 30-day uh, kind of deadline, we're going to start getting some more action within each chamber. So we should start seeing more in the next couple of weeks moving. House Bill 1617, the school calendar matching up with holidays with the state, still in rules. House Bill 1162 with the graduation requirements. Now, this one is a new one that has been referred to rules. And one of the things this reduced the number of credits from 24 to 20, that was removed in committee. So the credit requirement will still be maintained at 24. All this does is adds another pathway for graduation. And so there was a lot of concerns about some of these pathways, like offering alternatives for how you get to the graduation requirements. So anyway, we'll just be interesting to see what happens with that one as it moves through the Senate too. So I think that one is not going to be in its final form. I think there will be adjustments made in the Senate as well for that one. Senate Bill 5043, school employee housing, no action on that one. It is still sitting in rules. Senate Bill 5498, the awarding of posthumous high school diplomas, that one did pass and is waiting the Rules Committee. And then House Bill 1611, the highly capable. All this does is talks about equity. And in the public testimony that I listened to, the biggest concern about highly capable is the test. And the test is not the sole determiner, should not be the sole determiner of what a highly capable student is. I think as teachers, we see kids that are highly capable and they just don't do well on a high cap test. And so they don't get into the highly capable program. So this one actually passed out of the House Education Committee with 100% of those that were there voted for it. So that's kind of an indicator that's a kind of an important thing to add in. And I think as a teacher, there are students that I've had that I think are highly capable that maybe just don't test well. So just because they can't make a test doesn't mean they're not highly capable. So that's going to be, I think that one will be moved pretty quick. Scheduled for executive session. Still waiting on Senate Bill 5511 to be scheduled. It's not scheduled yet. That's the uniform standard time. So that would be, instead of staying permanent daylight savings, we would just go into uniform standard time. So just waiting on that one. House Joint Resolution 4200, school bonds passing rate at 50%. This is scheduled for executive session this week. So I've noticed it's scheduled for the 1st and the 3rd. So I'm not sure what day, if any, it'll happen. Still just a lot of concerns about this of why should a bond be at 50%? It's a little more of an ask for the citizens of the district. And so this may not go. I mean, it seems to every year get stuck about the same spot. So House Bill 1834 with school attendance, still awaiting to be executive session in committee. Scheduled for public testimony. This was an interesting one. So House Bill 1807, this was brought to my attention by another teacher that I work with concerning civics education. And I read through the bill. There's nothing really controversial about it. It just says, here's the things that need to be taught. Every student should be taking this. And it just talks about the history of our state, history of our country, the good, the bad, everything. And it doesn't really leave anything out, but it is very specific in what it's asking educators to teach. It also has some information that are like you can't be forced to teach something that you don't necessarily agree with. And if you are going to teach something controversial, you have to present both sides. Like no student should know what side you're on if you're teaching certain issues. This one also, there were some good questions raised about like where is this coming from? Is there some research behind it? And unfortunately, the prime sponsor of the bill had no good answer for that. All that was said was, well, the people should decide what is taught, and it's kind of like, well, yes, they should, but at the same time, there should be a rationale for why we're going to be reintroducing something, the importance of it, and just our opinions of what we think should not drive everything that we do. Now, there should be some parental involvement, yes, but not to the extent that I think the prime sponsor of the bill was asking for. So that one's kind of interesting. Probably not going to get scheduled for executive session just based on the questions that were asked from committee. A lot of people chimed in that were not in support for public testimony, and then a lot of people did not testify but said they did not support. I think there were 700 some that did not support compared to 200 that did support this bill. So anyway, that one's probably not going to go anywhere. The concerns that were raised from a teacher, trying to get some more information on exactly what the concerns were, but there was nothing in the bill that allowed parents to come in and dictate what you teach. It just said, here's what's going to be taught in civics. And it mentioned specific historical texts, and just kind of to try to take the controversy out of what's been going on in public schools across the country, not just in Washington State. So some of the issues that were raised had to do with that, but for the most part, I mean, there was nothing really controversial in the bill. It was just seemed very rigid as far as this is what will be taught and that's it. So there were some issues around that. And that the House Bill 1633, the school choice bill, has gone nowhere, and it probably won't because we're in Washington. And it's kind of interesting to see some of these bills and some of the arguments that are made from one side to the other. And I just want to make sure, that our legislators really keep the kids in mind, because that's really what it's all about. If it's going to be good for students and good for them, then we should try to find a way to make it work instead of just, no, don't agree with that. So sometimes the politicalization gets in the way of good legislation. So that is our update for this week. And hope you have a good week. We should hopefully in the next couple of weeks see some stuff moving out of the House or out of the Senate into the other chambers.